thought I would remember it. Okay, so I'm starting late here, guys. Sorry for the recording error. Okay, sorry about that. I'm trying to get used to this. Okay, so anyway, I just want to make sure you understand how many animals they're going through and what it takes to slaughter an animal. It's not easy. It's not quick. Okay. Then at the beginning of each of your months, you shall present a burnt offering to the Lord, 2 bulls and 1 ram, 7 male lambs, and 1 year-old without defect, and 3/10 of an ephah of fine flour mixed with oil for a grain offering for each bull, and 2/10 of fine flour mixed with oil for a grain offering for the 1 ram, and 1/10 of an ephah of fine flour mixed with oil for a grain offering for each lamb, for a burnt offering of a soothing aroma, all offered by fire to the Lord. Now notice the amount kind of corresponds of the oil and all corresponds with the size of the animal, so it's not a generic amount. Everything's in ratios. Everything's supposed to be proportionate. And I think that's another thing that's interesting if you start paying attention to it anyway. In particular, throughout the Old Testament, everything is in proportion. And I think sometimes we may not see it that way as far as God's response sometimes to the people going astray, but it's in proportion to what they've done. And in this, the offerings are proportionate for each animal. The percentages stay somewhat similar. Their drink offering shall be half a hin of wine for the bull, and 1/3 of a hin for the ram, and 1/4 of a hin for a lamb. This is the burnt offering of each month throughout the months of the year. So again, proportions, same thing here with the drink offerings as it is with the oil and grain, or flour, however you want to look at it. It's all similar. And 1 male goat for a sin offering to the Lord. It shall be offered with its drink offering in addition to the continual burnt offering. So again, we just keep adding to these numbers, don't we? Getting huge already. Then on the 14th day of the first month shall be the Lord's Passover. On the 15th day of the month shall be a feast. Unleavened bread shall be eaten for 7 days. On the first day shall be a holy convocation. You shall do no laborious work. Now, I'm going to go ahead and pause there for just a second because we're going to continue as we go on talking about certain holidays for them without laborious work, meaning they got to relax. Now, we can look at this and go through this today because I want you to pay attention to every time they have these vacations or a week off or a month off of no laborious work and this kind of thing, and put it into perspective. We tend to think of things a little differently than how they are there. We think of how things are for us. Now, for us, how many days did you work during the week when you were still working? Typically, it's 5 days a week, right? So you had every weekend off. Do you think they had weekends off? They had the Sabbath off. So they had 1 day off. We get 2. So when you start thinking about how many days off you have in a week, think about they're out working 6 out of 7 days. And really, they got to work harder on that 6th day to prepare everything to do nothing on the Sabbath. Because they weren't supposed to do anything. So on the Sabbath, they had to prepare everything they were going to need to eat, drink, anything else had to be prepared the day beforehand, had to be prepared on Friday. So Friday was a really busy day to prepare to do nothing for the following. Whereas for us, we think of we got the weekend off.
Well, Terry worked 6 days. He only got double overtime because he's greedy.
Oh, is that what was it for love of money? Is that what it was?
Yeah, love of money.
Somehow I don't think so. But it's well, and the other thing is today we've gotten into our culture has kind of changed in that today, because of cell phones, we're on call 24/7 for our jobs, aren't we? At least from my perspective, I am. But then again, I'm self-employed, so I am on call 24/7. It doesn't matter. I got to work when I can get it. So for me, it's a little bit more perspective. But I just want to make a point of that, and I can also do this for real-world examples. if you're over in the EU at all, in particular in England, the United Kingdom, and they've got vacations all the time. They go on vacation, they go somewhere for a month. Why? Because they've got more than a month off every year. They got like a month of vacation, and then they have all their holidays. So every group of people, every country has different perceptions of what's work and when it's time to have downtime. Israel's is just a little bit different. It's dictated by God versus dictated by the world and what business wants. So just something to think about as we go through more of these. Okay. You shall present an offering by fire, a burnt offering to the Lord, 2 bulls, 1 ram, 7 male lambs, 1 year old, having them without defect. For their grain offering you shall offer fine flour mixed with oil, 3/10 of an ephah for a bull, 2/10 for a ram, 1/10 of an ephah for you shall offer for each of those 7 lambs, 1 male goat for a sin offering, an atonement for you. You shall present these besides the burnt offering of the morning, which is for a continual burnt offering. After this manner, you shall present daily for 7 days the food of the offering by fire, of a soothing aroma to the Lord. It shall be presented with its drink offering in addition to the continual burnt offering. On the 7th day, you shall have a holy convocation. You shall do no laborious work. Yeah, but just think about how many, these priests are moving, slaughtering animals, man. They might as well work in a slaughterhouse. I'm serious. How many, we just added another 7 and then said, hey, we want to do this every day during this 7-day period. I'm just saying that's a lot to go through. That's a lot of work. And we have limited actual priests, right? Which is why in part I think the priesthood grew and they increased the number of priests because they were trying to, keep in mind, you still had people coming in to do, well, I've got a guilt offering. I got to do a wave offering. I got to do a sin offering on their own. Individual people coming in having to do that, or families doing that. That's a lot of stuff going on. Somebody had to be just covered in blood the whole time. Had to be good at it. Don't get me wrong. It takes me forever. It takes me half a day or more to slaughter a deer. These are much bigger animals, but then again, I do it maybe once every couple of years. These people are doing it how many per day? Depends on the week, right? It's one day they're doing 7, and that 7 doesn't include the morning one and the evening one on top of everything else. And if it was, depending on what day it was, it might have been 10 or 11. Then you get the people throwing ones in there on you. How many? Just seems huge to me, that's all. Also, on the day of the first fruits, when you present a new grain offering to the Lord in your festival of weeks, you shall have a holy convocation. You shall do no laborious work. So, see there again, you've got a vacation, so to speak, doing no laborious work. But you're talking about the first fruits. You're about to have a whole lot of laborious work. So I think, again, this is where you're always planning ahead for them, going, you better rest up, because that's what's the first fruits. Guess what's coming? It's called harvest time. And we don't have a grain harvester. We don't, you look at the huge equipments that comes around out here. We're in the country enough. You see it. Where you go out and you see that $250,000 plus piece of equipment. That's the older ones. Now they have ones that GPS, navigate. It costs them $1 million for these suckers. And you'll see them in particular when they're harvesting grain or corn. In Iowa, it's really popular with this. Just look out and feel. So those $1 million ones, there's somebody sitting in there, but they're sitting back reading a book. It's GPS controlled, just most efficient way to go clean that field. These people are doing it by hand. You think about the reaper. Okay, we all have this image, right? Got a curved sickle and stand there and cloak on. Well, that sickle is real. I've got one out in my barn right now. It's family one, been in the family for years. Why? Because you go out there, you take that and right across. Okay, I need to do that and collect hay so I can put that out in the barn and be ready to feed the cows in the winter. So that's a manual, just walk along. I've seen videos of these guys that still will use them in other countries. Boy, they know what they're doing. Let me tell you, walk up and somebody else is behind them off to the side, just grabbing everything they just cut, carrying it off, putting it in a wagon. Somebody got an ox on it. They're hauling it off to the barn or wherever. But keep in mind, at this point in time, that's what was still happening. This was a manual process. All this work just goes into this. I still think about, where did they get where were they storing everything? Was God providing manna or some equivalent for all the animals with them? Because based on what we just talked about, they had to have millions of animals with them too to support this and support themselves. So they had to be out there just, I don't know, you're in a desert. Where are you getting the hay? God provides. That's all I can say. The only way this happens is God made it happen. Either they just breathed in air and that was enough for them, or I don't know, but something had to happen. And it's all by God. I just like to make that point because I know what it takes to take care of cattle. I had to go buy 3 rolls of hay from my neighbor because I was a little short this year because of the normal guy I get my hay from didn't get as much because we were dry this past summer. So he didn't get a second cutting, and therefore I didn't get to buy my second portion of my hay. Needless to say, I'll make up for that this year. But point is, you got to plan ahead for these things, and these people were having to do all of that to provide for their hogs. So that means God was providing for them everything. Otherwise, how would they have been able to have all those cattle out there? I think it just goes to show that God took care of them completely. Even though he had them wandering in the desert for 40 years, he provided food for them. He provided not just for them, he provided for the cattle. That's a huge amount. Not just the support of the people. I mean, they're getting manna, but all the animals that had to survive. It's a lot, man. That's all I'm saying. Okay, continuing here in 27. You shall offer a burnt offering for a soothing aroma to the Lord. 2 young bulls, 1 ram, 7 male lambs, 1 year old, and their grain offering, fine flour mixed with oil, 3/10 of an ephah for each bull, 2/10 for 1 ram, 1/10 for each of the 7 lambs. Also, 1 male goat to make atonement for you. Besides the continual burnt offering and its grain offerings, you shall present them with their drink offerings. They shall be without defect. So we just keep adding this number up. And it's getting to be huge, in my opinion, as far as what they're having to slaughter. Now, so we've talked about some of this. We've talked about the cattle and the process for that. What about the flour? Have you ever, you see the grain out there, but grain isn't flour. If you want to make it into flour and mix it with something to make bread, what do? You beat it into a powder. Now, even as soon as people really got into doing that in a stationary position and not being kind of nomads like Israel is, they started finding, hey, if we can make 2 smooth stones and turn them, we can get animals or water or something to do that, and we can grind that flour and we can adjust it and make it as fine as we want. At this point, they're not doing that. This is another hand job. No, he's sitting there just beating on that wheat in order to make it into flour. So to have this stuff available, that's a lot more hand work. I just want to kind of put this in perspective. It's not as easy as it sounds. That's my point of all this. But then again, you're in the desert. What else do you have to do?
I'm just having a hard time grasping the concept of this humongous group of people in the desert.
Yeah.
With all of these animals and all of the grain that's
Yeah.
needed to feed them and the animals.
Yeah.
I guess I just can't figure
Exactly. Exactly. And to be able to manufacture, like they just did we're talking about the unleavened bread and eating that for 7 days. So everybody's got to eat bread, unleavened bread for 7 days. That means how much do you have to make to have millions of people eating unleavened bread for 7 days? I mean, that's a lot. That's a lot of grain to beat up, and you don't have these millstones, right? It doesn't exist yet. I mean, maybe it did. I'm assuming it didn't. Definitely not for them, since they're moving constantly. But yeah, I'm with you. The scale of this is enormous. Yeah, picturing it, good luck. I just can't see it. You may have heard years ago, there's a 1 million man march on Washington about, I forget what that one was at the time. They claimed it was 1 million people. Well, okay, times that by 5, maybe 10. Then you're getting to the size of the nation of Israel. Just to put it in perspective, if you remember any of the videos from that. So, it's difficult to figure out, and all the work that had to go into all this, just amazing. Okay. Now, in the 7th month, on the 1st day of the month, you shall also have a holy convocation. You shall do no laborious work. It will be to you a day for blowing trumpets. Okay, so they get a day off of laborious work, but they're still going to go blow trumpets. You shall offer a burnt offering as a soothing aroma to the Lord. 1 bull, 1 ram, 7 male lambs, and 1 year old without defect. Also their grain offering, fine flour mixed with oil, 2/10 of an ephah for the bull, 2/10 for the ram, and 1/10 for each of the 7 lambs. Okay, so the last item here I'll talk about, and all this stuff they're offering, is the oil. What's olive oil? Where do they get all the olives to create the oil? Were they sending out raiding parties and going out and hitting the olive fields? I don't know. Where did all this come from? I don't know. But you had to have the oil to make the unleavened bread. You had to have it to make regular bread. But the point is, God provided it somehow. I don't know where. I really don't. They're in the desert. I don't get it. But that's something else they had to have. And they had to have an abundance, right? Because just a week of unleavened bread, that's a lot of oil. Well, ladies cook this stuff. I have too. This is not, I love to cook. I love to be the chef. And I know what it is to go to the store and get stuff. That's easy. They're going out and making every last piece of this, putting it all together by hand. I mean, that's a lot of work. I've tried some of this stuff. I've tried making leather out of, cow hides. Why? I wanted to know if I could. I've tried making vellum, which if you don't know what vellum is, it's what you used before you had parchment paper and you wanted something to last, you used a deer hide. And I called it vellum because it kind of looks translucent. That's what you would write on and roll up as your scroll. I've made these things. Let me tell you, that's a whole lot of work, especially if you do it the old ways without chemicals that you have today. All right, you're going out, you're burning hardwood to get the ash from that, to mix that in water, to put the hide in, to wait 3 days for the hair to start falling out of the hide, and you've already had to scrape all the inside of it and the hide and all this stuff. It's a huge undertaking. All of this stuff it's a lot of manual labor, and it's a lot of skill if you want to avoid nicking. For example, back to the temple, if you remember that, they've covered it with all these hides for the roof. Well, man, that takes, and as much as God loves perfection, he's not going to want all the nicked leather. He wants the fine leather, right? With no nicks in it. Well, in Linville, you've got, a leather store. Some of you probably know about. First off, everything there costs a fortune. You need to get a mortgage to go buy something. Oh, it's great stuff. It is. But my point of it is, he can't even buy stuff from the hides from regular farmers. He can only buy it from feedlots that take them directly from feed to slaughter, because then they haven't been out in the fields and been scratched by barbed wire or something else, because there's no barbed wire at a feedlot. Because otherwise he can't use that hide because it's going to have a scratch on it somewhere. Everything's got to be perfect. So it's just going back to how you maintain and keep all these animals together, even back then. You didn't have to deal with barbed wire then, but I'm just saying everything had to be perfect. And it's more work, more going on here. Just trying to, again, put the whole thing in perspective. Because I know it's easy to read through this and just think, yeah, it's another offering, it's another offering. You got to understand what goes into that offering. And that's what I'm wanting to identify today. Okay. Okay, offer one male goat for a sin offering to make atonement for you, besides the burnt offering of the new moon and the grain offering and the continual burnt offering and its grain offering and their drink offerings, according to the accordance for a soothing aroma, an offering to by fire to the Lord. Then on the 10th day of the 7th month you shall have a holy convocation, and you shall humble yourselves, and you shall not do any work. You shall present a burnt offering to the Lord as a soothing aroma, 1 bull, 1 ram, 7 male lambs, 1 year old, having them without defect. And their grain offering and fine flour mixed with oil, 2/10 of an ephah for the bull, 2/10 for the 1 ram, 1/10 for each of the 7 lambs, and 1 male goat for a sin offering, besides the sin offering of atonement and the continual burnt offering and its grain offering and their drink offerings. We just keep adding on here. Again, trying to put it in perspective. I mean, I'd need a calendar to keep up with what I've got to do and when. And keep in mind, most of this, at this time, this is all oral tradition. They're not writing everything down. They're writing some things down. They do have language. But it's time consuming. And again, I just think it's important to get an idea of what all is going on here. Then on the 15th day of the 7th month, you shall have a holy convocation. Keep going there a lot, don't we? You shall do no laborious work, and you shall observe a feast to the Lord for 7 days. You shall present a burnt offering, an offering of by fire as a soothing aroma to the Lord. 13 bulls, 2 rams, 14 male lambs, 1 year old, which are without defect. And their grain offering, fine flour mixed with oil, 3/10 of an ephah for each of the 13 bulls, 2/10 for each one of the 2 rams, and 1/10 for each of the 14 lambs. And 1 male goat for a sin offering, besides the continual burnt offering, its grain offerings, and its drink offering. Then on the 2nd day, 12 bulls, 2 rams, 14 male lambs, 1 year old without defect, no partridge in a pear tree yet, and their grain offerings and their drink offerings for the bulls. For the rams and the lambs by their numbers according to to the ordinance, and 1 male goat for a sin offering, besides the continual burnt offering and its grain offering and their drink offerings. Heck of a thing, isn't it? It's a lot to keep up with. All right, we're going to end up stopping here for the day. I think we'll pick up at, 20 here next week. But again, just trying to make sure we all have some idea of how much is going on here and how much they're going through on sacrifices and what the priest's job is, how many things they have to slaughter, how many animals, how good they have to be at all of that. It seems like a heck of a job to me. All right, let's go ahead and close with prayer.